Tension is rising in Washington, but the source isn't a traditional adversary, it's South Korea. For decades, South Korea was a cornerstone of American strategy in Asia, a symbol of shared democratic values. But on October 27, 2025, that foundation is cracking. Whispers of a second ASEAN drift suggest a realignment is underway. The alliance, once ironclad, is now under unprecedented scrutiny. This isn't sudden, it's the result of years of diverging interests. South Korea, forged in the Cold War, is no longer content to play a supporting role. It's asserting its own voice, charting a new course in a rapidly changing world. Washington is alarmed, struggling to grasp the speed and scope of this shift. The question is no longer if the alliance will change, but how deeply, and with what consequences for the Indo-Pacific. South Korea's independent foreign policy and deepening economic ties with China are under the microscope. President Lee Jae-myung's balanced diplomacy sounds to many in Washington like distancing from the US. The trust that defined the alliance for 70 years is eroding. If South Korea's commitment wavers, the entire security architecture of the region could be thrown into disarray. The chill between Washington and Seoul threatens to send a cold front across Asia, forcing nations to reconsider their allegiances. Every rift has a spark. For the US-South Korea alliance, it was a summer day in 2024 at Hyundai's electric vehicle plant in Georgia. The plant symbolized deep economic partnership, until federal agents under the Trump administration raided it. Their mission to deport hundreds of South Korean engineers for alleged visa violations. The move was abrupt, public, and humiliating. Trump declared, "We build American cars with American hands," framing it as a win for US workers. But in Seoul, it was seen as a calculated insult, not an immigration issue. These were highly skilled professionals, not undocumented laborers. Images of Korean engineers in handcuffs were broadcast worldwide, fueling outrage. The South Korean government saw it as a deliberate effort to embarrass the nation. The incident did more damage than years of trade disputes. It personalized the conflict, transforming policy differences into a tangible insult. In Seoul, it was viewed as a betrayal, a line crossed. Trust built over generations was broken in a single afternoon. The Georgia incident became the catalyst, proof that the relationship was no longer one of equals. It was a wake-up call for Seoul, and Seoul was about to answer. Seoul's response was swift and strategic. President Lee Jae-myung, already advocating greater autonomy, seized the moment. In a televised address, he declared, "The era of one-sided dependence is over. We will build our future on mutual respect and national interest." This was a direct challenge to the US alliance. South Korean diplomats accelerated talks with China, shifting from economic cooperation to deeper strategic dialogue. High-level meetings with Beijing became more frequent and substantive. The agenda expanded to include regional security and supply chain integration independent of the US. The message, if the US is unreliable, South Korea will find new partners. This pivot was pragmatic. China is South Korea's largest trading partner and a key player in regional security. The Georgia incident convinced many in Seoul that over-reliance on the US was a vulnerability. The move toward China was framed as necessary diversification, not abandonment. South Korea was redefining its strategic portfolio. As frustration with Washington grew, Seoul's outreach to Beijing intensified. Senior South Korean officials began discreet trips to Beijing, discussing joint tech research, economic shocks, and even a non-aggression pact. China welcomed Seoul, offering incentives like market access for Korean tech giants and streamlined investments. Chinese media praised President Lee's independent foreign policy. South Korea's attitude toward China's Belt and Road Initiative shifted. Now, Seoul is exploring synergies and even joining select projects. A recent summit in Qingdao culminated in a new era of strategic cooperative partnership. The two nations pledged to collaborate on climate change, supply chains, and more, creating a parallel economic and technological ecosystem. Former President Trump lashed out, but for Seoul, the embrace of China was now a calculated reality. The pivot was no longer theoretical, it was happening. South Korea was moving into Beijing's orbit. In this new landscape, South Korea is championing strategic neutrality. The ROC 2030, a sovereign path roadmap, rejects the idea of choosing between the US and China. Instead, it calls for neutrality, engaging all powers based on Korea's own interests. This doctrine is shaping policy, pursuing trade deals with any bloc including China-led RCEP, while slowing US-led initiatives. On security, Seoul is investing in self-reliant defense, reducing dependence on U.S. troops. The U.S. is deeply concerned, seeing neutrality as a drift toward Beijing. Trump has questioned the need for U.S. troops in Korea, hinting at a drawdown. Proponents in Seoul argue neutrality is about survival, not abandonment. Korea's position, democratic capitalist bordering North Korea reliant on China for trade, makes choosing sides perilous. Strategic neutrality is a high-stakes gamble, but for many, it's the only way to preserve sovereignty and prosperity. The risks are real, but so are the opportunities. South Korea is betting on itself. The diplomatic shift is mirrored by a generational change in public opinion. Recent polls show more South Koreans under 30 now see China as a more important partner than the U.S. The U.S. is viewed as unreliable and self-interested, while China's economic and cultural influence grows. Media and social platforms amplify this sentiment. Memes, editorials, and hashtags like Korea First trend for weeks. Even conservative outlets question the wisdom of following Washington's lead. Young Koreans see their country as a global powerhouse, not a nation saved by America. This groundswell gives President Lee political capital to pursue an independent foreign policy. The U.S. image as a benevolent protector is fading, replaced by skepticism. This generational shift is perhaps the greatest long-term threat to the alliance. It's not just a policy dispute, it's a new national identity. The change is deep and likely permanent. South Korea's pivot is clearest in its bold economic moves. Seoul is exploring joint infrastructure projects with China and Russia, including a rail link through North Korea to Europe, an Iron Silk Road. This reorients Korea's economy away from US-controlled maritime routes. South Korea is deepening integration with RCEP, favoring Chinese tech and logistics. Participation in US-led economic frameworks is lukewarm at best. Korean tech giants are investing in R&D in Shenzhen and Bangalore, partnering with Chinese firms on next-gen technologies. This challenges US efforts to build a tech alliance against China. The economic reorientation is risky, exposing Korea to Beijing's influence and possible US retaliation. But Seoul sees greater risk in stagnation and irrelevance. By forging new partnerships, South Korea is betting its future on becoming a Eurasian hub. The US-South Korea alliance is undergoing a fundamental transformation. Experts call it the Second Asian Drift, this time driven by a confident, powerful Asia. A senior analyst notes, "We helped build a strong Korea, now it wants to make its own decisions." The US must adapt from leader to partner, or risk losing its Indo-Pacific strategy. If Korea adopts neutrality, the regional security network could unravel, emboldening China. Allies like Japan fear being left on the front line, questioning US commitments. The alliance faces two paths: a managed separation with new security arrangements, or escalating tension and acrimony. The outcome depends on diplomatic wisdom and flexibility. South Korea is no longer a dependent state. It's a global power with its own vision. The crisis isn't just about a plant or a president, it's about self-determination in a changed world. Korea's survival now depends on its own strength and adaptability. The ironclad alliance is melting. What emerges will redefine Asia's future.